Good evening, Chelsea fans. We're back with another pod, fresh from another agonising and damaging defeat for Chelsea, away at Arsenal at the Emirates on Sunday evening, as Chelsea's recent and long-term struggles are extended. We'll review the week just gone with a deep dive into Chelsea's ongoing struggles away from home in big matches. And we're also going to welcome back returning guest Ryan McIntyre to bring the opposition view ahead of Chelsea's crunch midweek trip to Villa Park. Let's get going.
Another day, another loss against Arsenal. Arteta's stranglehold over the Blues extends to 11 consecutive competitive games. And you were in attendance, Ryan. How was it at the Emirates?
It was another painful experience, if I'm perfectly honest. I mean, us Chelsea fans have grown disgracefully familiar with losing to Arsenal, and in particular away from home. It's usually been quite a chastening experience. We've been steamrolled in the first half on multiple occasions at the Emirates. Last year, I think, was a really drab 1-0 where we didn't create a single chance. This game felt a little bit different to that, and I think by the second half we realised this was a real opportunity to bring that hoodoo to an end and capitalise on that palpable anxiety that was really obvious for anyone to see in the Emirates, and I'm sure on TV as well. First 20 minutes was clearly a familiar story. Not much happening. Arsenal dominant and a goal from their first corner, essentially, and the familiar feeling of shrinking violets wilting from the Chelsea squad, as we've grown familiar with in on big occasions. But actually, we started to play some football and got a corner of our own towards the end of that first half and managed to capitalize there. Second half, starting on the front foot, and yeah, there was a real chance to take advantage. I hark back to that moment where João Pedro had a ricochet from a corner, and that really had to be the moment. I said it at the time, that had to go in. The stadium was at fever pitch, and if we'd gone 2-1 up at that point, like Man United did around a similar time in the match when Patrick Torgu fired in a volley from about 30 yards, I could see us going on to win that game, quite frankly. I'm not going to go into the refereeing decisions in any detail here. Arsenal got themselves back in front against the run of play, another corner. And I think at that stage, we probably could have got back into the game, but we were massively let down by two individuals, Robert Sanchez and Pedro Neto. Sanchez flailing and defaulting back to his factory settings for the two Arsenal corners. So I can't assign too much blame to him on that first one, but that second one was just disgraceful. I've got no idea what he's doing. We know he's tall enough and physically dominant enough to command the box. We know it's not easy when Arsenal congest it, but he just seemed to be kneeling on the floor behind a Chelsea player when that header went in from Timber, which is just disgraceful. And not in line with his form recently. We've discussed his massive uptick, but ultimately I don't think we can rely on him moving forward. And Pedro Neto, who I've been defending vehemently and been a massive advocate for, really just inexplicable. Like the inability to read the room as a Chelsea player with all the chat and ridicule of our petulant, inexperienced squad and the record-breaking numbers of red cards. Talks himself into a yellow following that goal. Reece James clearly inveighing against him and begging him to just walk away. And what does he do 5 minutes later? Just lunges wildly at Martinelli to basically end the match for us. And in my mind, that was the point the game was over. But there was continuous chance generation, even with 10 men. We saw that Garnacho cross shot, which really could have quite easily gone in. Chances for Delap on the counter, João Pedro bicycle kick as well. I think it's just a massive shame, and my overarching feeling leaving the Emirates is just one of profound sadness. Actually, not much anger apart from that feeling being directed at Pedro Neto because it felt like a positive performance, and there were players that I have to laud for their performance. Reece James in particular, João Pedro, Joel Hatto, Trev, Sarr, Caicedo. And it was a huge opportunity missed and a painful loss ultimately.
Red card again. Ole, 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 ole. How many times are we going to say it this season? I mean, total self-sabotage once again. Completely brain dead from Neto, as you say. I'm watching, say, from the box myself, didn't have a ticket for this one, sadly. You saw it playing out in slow motion once again, akin to that Cucurella moment at Fulham. Surely he won't. And then he does. Just ridiculous. I think the allegation that he was oblivious to the original yellow proves precisely why the petulance is so costly. That accrual of sort of needless yellows is killing us. And as you say, it just totally lets the Gunners off the hook, denies a grandstand finish, which I imagine would have been a sort of nervy finale. I think the fact that Keane basically predicted this red card in the build-up tells you everything.
I know
Rezende
it
just
was in
has
my
to stamp it
mind.
out.
It was in my mind.
There's Neto there, and then yeah, have to confess, a self-proclaimed Sanchez apologist myself. I do have to hold my hands up. It was a total stinker from him once again on the biggest stage. I think it's quite clear that he's not capable of playing out, particularly under pressure. And in that regard, I would actually argue that it's not only on the individual, but the collective in terms of the approach. I personally think he's been one of our better performers this season. But the other performance that stands out as severely below par and just not good enough was that first leg tie once again against Arsenal. So we're talking about undoubtedly, fair play to them, probably the best press, this defensive structure in the league. And just again and again, despite it not working, we continued to persist with this really high risk and for me, low reward approach. So it's one thing sort of luring an opposition forward, but when you then break that press, you need to really be reaping rewards. So whether that's elite wing play, 2-on-2s, 3-on-3s that you're going to capitalize on, say the wingers just aren't there for us. Obviously, we'll talk about Esteval missing and the recruitment in the summer, but that reward just was not there early on. And for me, the fact that that message doesn't quickly flick a switch from Rosenia or even the players on the pitch is unforgivable. I actually think that Sanchez performance against PSG, talk of top level, the biggest stage, he was phenomenal in that final, totally imperious. And the difference was that his remit was adjusted. His remit was simplified to playing long and simple and continuing to make the top saves that we know he's got in his locker.
George, how do we stamp out this issue of petulance, which is resulting in unholy amounts of yellow and red cards for Chelsea? I've seen some speculation of radical reforms within the squad from management around punishment and deduction of wages for yellow cards directly resulting from dissent in particular, which is obviously what contributed to Neto's red on this occasion. Is it possible, and why can't we tried this approach of treating these individuals like adults, but they're not capable. So I think management is going to have to take matters into their own hands and try something that's never been done before, which is just embarrassing, frankly. Do you think we can stamp this out?
Well, we've spoken at length about the pitfalls of the long-term contract. So ultimately, no accountability. These players aren't playing for contract renewal. They're pretty cozy. They're pretty safe. Ultimately, I agree with those sort of comments online, out and about. It may have to be fines stipulated within contracts.
And George Cole Palmer's struggles continue in this one. Uh, there was a period in that first half where he was finding pockets and wasn't really doing much with the space, flinging shots over the bar, a couple of passes that went astray, often picking the wrong choice and passing instead of shooting. So clearly something's not right there. And I think what was and continues to be a physical issue is now resulting in, a mental battle for Cole Palmer. And I wonder if it's in his own interest to go to the World Cup this summer. I think he's just completely at a point now where he needs a reset physically and mentally. Particular emphasis on the physical component to that because he looks cooked at the moment.
I think while we were competitive in the game, the profligacy, not in terms of chances, gilt edged chances missed, but just sloppy, wasted counters, wasted breaks, And as I say, it was predominantly Cole. I'll add Enzo into the mix as well. Neto getting clamped down by Hincapié. I thought Joao was a cut above. Thought it was phenomenal how he pinned, say, probably the toughest centre back pairing in the business, but had zero support from any other attacking options in a game where, quite frankly, I thought they were granted more joy than you would expect against
Yeah.
this Arsenal side, but just simply did not have the decision making, the quality to capitalise. And quality is a word that, particularly Palmer and also Enzo, you'd want to attribute to the two of them. Deeply frustrating.
George, do you agree with the notion that a midfield for Chelsea of Enzo Fernandez and Cole Palmer simply is never going to work?
I think we've posited this for some time now against any sort of competent opposition, which in an increasingly strong Premier League probably now extends to sort of 18, 19 clubs. I want to see, particularly with Neto out, if they're both going to be played, I want to see Palmer deployed in that right wing position with that midfield bolstered and more cohesion across the park.
And a positive cameo from Romeo Lavia, the forgotten or unforgotten man, who is back into contention now. For how long we never know, but once again, just proving that he is an incredible, prodigious talent, even when he's hardly kicked a ball in 5 months.
So many a meme that sort of arises from the ashes for an impending Liverpool clash. Let's hope that we see him more frequently than just that game at Anfield, again upcoming. I'll be there at Villa Park in attendance on Wednesday. I would love to see him from the get-go, really stamp authority and say hopefully complete, if not 90, a good 60, 70 minutes there.
George, a truly alarming stat that I think brings Chelsea's downward trajectory into full view and sharp focus. Chelsea have not won a single Premier League away game against Arsenal, Manchester City, United, Liverpool since August 2021. 18 games and counting. How did we get here?
I think the post-match reaction from that Arsenal game, say, was largely positive for the Blues. Performance deemed respectable, competitive showing, talks of us in the ascendancy second half and how it could have been different had it remained 11 versus 11. I've even had Arsenal fans sort of concede so much themselves. And upon reflection, as the dust has started to settle, I do agree in isolation. It was a decent performance, but I think a clear, undeniable, and ugly pattern has emerged. As you said, winless in 18 against the traditional top four is just utterly unacceptable. I mean, we've not had one streaky victory away from home since Blueco's acquisition of Chelsea in May 2022. Even the likes of Spurs in the sorry state they're in consistently sort of rock up at the Etihad, etc. I actually think it was that first 20 minutes that told you everything you need to know with respect to this inexcusable trend. You mentioned shrinking violets. I thought it was one of the shakiest of showings. Admittedly, yes, big top side, but we were repeatedly overplaying at the back, misplacing sloppy passes, dashing any sort of attacking opportunities. And as Chelsea fans, we are well aware that is players playing below their potential. It should have been Arsenal on edge here, anxious in pursuit of their first title in 20 years, City winning the night before. Chelsea almost granted a free hit. Yes, it was important in terms of our race for top four, top five, but we weren't expected to win. And instead, Arsenal should have really been 2-3 nil up at the 20-minute mark, game buried, and not just a one goal lead. And ultimately, for me, it is a combination of psychological frailties coupled with a lack of pragmatism. So you mentioned 2021 was the year when we were last successful. It was Arsenal at the Emirates under, you guessed it, Tommy Tuchel. So we actually beat Arsenal, City, and Liverpool all at once in that same season under Tommy T. We've had an Old Trafford hoodoo for 10 plus years now. We'll cast that one aside. But Tommy Tuchel had me with a level of confidence going into those big ties. I would genuinely say like never before, even those prime Chelsea years where we were undoubtedly a more dominant side. The big encounters, those big away games, no one for me has ever set us up better. And I think it is the perfect, slash, he was the perfect blend of pragmatism, self-belief. I mean, just thinking back to a couple of his quotes, talk of here to win titles, now is the time, wanting to build a team that no one wants to play against. There's no excuses, no talk of projects. And he forged a bespoke game plan for every given opposition, and he complemented that with an air of required arrogance. So there's respect, there's pragmatism, but also inherent belief. And I believe we are total opposite right now. Insanity, repeating the same mistakes over and over, overplaying, and ultimately youthful, shrinking violets, as you say.
Enzo Maresca had a bit of a reputation in the footballing discourse and community, and also Chelsea fans, for setting us up quite well for success in big matches. Did you buy into that at all, George? Because I don't remember us ever even being close to a big away scalp. There was obviously some home fixtures within that. Barcelona, we steamrolled, beat Liverpool at home last year. A couple of decent showings against Arsenal at home where we've only managed to draw, perhaps unfortunately, but I don't think we've ever even been close to a big away scalp, have we?
Yeah, I mean, the standout win of his tenure was that PSG Club World Cup final. Again, on neutral territory in the US, probably a slightly fervent but placid neutral fan base. And yes, home victories, but even Poch had a few of those. I actually think some of Poch's home wins, those Palmer classics, United 4-3,
Newcastle.
drawing against City, admittedly Newcastle, etc. We have had success at the bridge. The bridge can be fervent, the bridge can be electric. But I think, say, Maresca was as guilty as any
Yeah.
at showing zero level of adaptability, respect to an opponent. Again, insistent on sort of playing out his unique system, inverting fullbacks, etc., just not grasping the nettle and the need, say, to compete for the first 20, 30 minutes, get a foothold in the game, silence a fervent crowd, and then start to play your football. So actually, that game at the Emirates the other day, I thought we were given a total lifeline going into that the break at 1-1 there. And yes, it looked like we might be on our way to sort of taking that opportunity, playing much better in the second half. But again, the game should have been completely out of sight. Anfield, we've been blown away. United, we seem to consistently have been blown away recent years. And we're not even talking about a good United side here. For me, it is mental fragility and sort of faux arrogance, say, insistence on almost playing out, talk of a project, talk of how we're sort of iterating and winning today isn't that crucial, but it will come good down the line if we stick to our beliefs. You're almost throwing the game there and then with that mentality. As I said, even the likes of Spurs have had streaky wins at the Etihad. To not have one or two sort of throwaway variants, fluky wins at those grounds is just ridiculous. And say, speaks far more for me to the mental side than anything else.
How do we address that? Does it come from a alpha male manager? Does it come from the acquisition of experienced heads in the squad? Is it a bit of both, I presume?
Early days with Rosenia, but I do actually think something we've complimented him on early days is the deployment of that three-man midfield. So we mentioned in the previous section, Cole and Enzo in a midfield three is simply not compatible. It needs to be a midfield three, Caicedo with, say, Santos or hopefully the re-emerging Lavia. Could even be all three on occasion, with Cole out wide or an Enzo out wide with a winger. And then cutting edge that you're asking for at that top end of the pitch ultimately does come down to, once again, that shocking recruitment at the left wing. It was typical that Esteval was absent for this one. You do need, say, in Zhao, I think we've got one, but you do need a couple of those attackers capable of being defining, showing that real extra quality, grit, and determination in the crucial and critically limited moments and opportunities they'll get. I think we've got one of those in Esteval, but we clearly need something again on that left wing. Time now for the opposition view. Up next for the Blues feels like a season-defining clash. Aston Villa away Wednesday night at Villa Park. To preview this one, we've got returning friend of the pod and villain Ryan McIntyre. Welcome.
Cheers, George. Thanks for having me. Good to be back.
Great to have you on again, mate. I have to say it's been timely now twice. So that a previous occasion you had Villa flying high in the most unlikely of title charges. Fast forward, here we are. I think it's safe to say both sides starting to slide and very much needing 3 points here. How are you? How are you feeling? Obviously, context of that tough Wolves result Friday night, but just more generally, 10 games to go in the season.
Yeah, I'd say obviously not as optimistic as when we last spoke. I actually watched the highlights of the reverse fixture just before this chat, and the difference in just like the style of the play I was seeing in those highlights, what we're seeing now is like so different. The Wolves game was a real tough watch. Like just some of the most like turgid and like predictable football that I think I've seen from Villa this season. I think. But looking at towards Wednesday, it is like either make or break for the season. I think because we've got United after that as well, so it's a big week up ahead. But yeah, I just think with 10 games to go, it's season defining really.
I have to say, I've enjoyed watching those back-to-back games at Molineux. So starting with Arsenal and then yourselves more than Chelsea the last couple of games. I do think you have to contextualize that loss and say that Wolves are kind of finding this unexpected vein of form right at the end of the season and unfortunate timing for you guys. But I do have to agree, it does feel like the wheels are starting to fall off. Talk
Yeah,
when we last spoke around kind of that XG defying maths and people suggesting now there's a regression to the mean. Is that fair or are there other factors at play?
I think there's an element of that. Not to bang the drum like every club, but I think injuries have played a massive part. I think Boubacar Kamara. I think the equivalent relationship between Villa and him is quite similar to like City and Rodri. He really makes us tick. If you look at that patch at the start of the season where I think we had 1 point after 5 games, I think he only played like one game, and I think was a late sub in one of them due to like an injury he was having at the start of the season. And then we went on a run of winning 10, 11 games in a row. So I think without him and also Tielemans that we've been missing recently, like our midfield is just so predictable. We're lacking real quality, I think, with the final ball as well that we were previously. So yeah, injuries played a massive part. I think there's obviously an element of regression to the mean as well. Like we're not scoring worldies from outside the box anymore, but I think those two missing in midfield. And McGinn, who's like a workhorse, it offers something different. I just think, yeah, our midfield is not the same as what it was when we were on that really good run.
No, I have to say I'd be inclined to agree with you. I think at the time we suggested goals from range when you got the likes of Tielemans, McGinn, you say captain you mentioned. They do have top quality, and as you say, that squad has been stretched. Potentially Europa League becoming a distraction for that stretched squad. I was very surprised to see Ross Barkley on the pitch the other day. Him and Tammy actually was very much a throwback to, I'd say, some equally dark days for Chelsea not long back under Lampard.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned Barkley. Like, Emery has a soft spot for him for sure. Like, he loves bringing him off the bench. And then, well, Abraham it just epitomises like the rest of the window, right? Like, we brought Leon Bailey back off loan as well. We're running Nostalgia FC at the moment. Like, both Barkley and Bailey is like the dark days of Slippy G towards the end of his era there, right? So I think we're all feeling pretty similar.
Touch upon Tammy. I've actually seen calls for him to be recalled to that starting lineup. Is he playing well, or is it more of a case of Ollie Watkins just not nearly approaching those levels from last season?
I think it's a mixture. Tammy's been impactful when he came off the bench. I think he scored 2 and 2 off the bench or something like that. Well, 2 and 3 now because he didn't didn't score at the weekend, but in Friday night against Wolves. But I think I think with Watkins, like it's just he's a real confidence player. I think we saw it last season when John Duran was challenging him for a spot in the starting lineup. His numbers then started to dip a little bit, and I think there's a conspiracy theorist that he's currently playing through like a knee injury or something, and I think that seems to have been like hampering him. But he doesn't want to get surgery because then he'll miss out on the World Cup. But I think Watkins is a real confidence player, and it's also an emotional like player for me because like, I love him so much. But I think Tammy's definitely arguing for his starting spot at the moment. But I do think Watkins offers us a lot in terms of stretching play. I don't think because of again we're missing the midfielders of like Tielemans and Kamara. I don't think players are able to find him as well. So like that quality when it comes to a final ball to like recognizing one of Watkins' runs, I don't think is really getting spotted at the moment. I'd say he had one chance at Wolves that he didn't take, but other than that, he wasn't really in the game.
Definitely getting a sense of deja vu with our preview ahead of the last one. I said at the time, Watkins seems to have terrorized us over the years, and so it proved at the bridge. My fear is saying I'd be much happier Tammy starting for you boys. He does seem to find form. Whether, as you say, that is an emotional connection, he loves that fixture.
In terms of the game on Wednesday, like I'm not super confident. I'd say we're still pretty decent at home, even during this tricky spell. So I think we obviously got that to our advantage. But when I watched the Arsenal Chelsea game at the weekend, and I thought you guys played all right. Like first 15, 20 minutes, I think Neville mentioned it in commentary. Like you were finding space. Like Palmer was opening Arsenal up, but and what did you lose to? You lost to two set pieces, who and Arsenal are the best in the league. So I don't think Rosignol like embarrassed all the players really embarrassed himself against Emirates against Arsenal. Sorry. So no, I think it'll be a really tough game.
Just on that Arsenal point, you raise, yes, positives, but we are very much becoming the nearly men slash we've discussed on this pod shrinking violets, particularly in the sort of first 20 minutes, half hour of these big games. We've failed to win in 18 trips to the traditional top four, we say. So Arsenal, Liverpool, City, and United. But I was researching ahead of this one as well, and our record, I'd say I'd extend that to big away ties, has been utterly abysmal under Blueco. So our last win, I believe, at Villa Park was back in 2022. You guys did the double on us last season. So it very much feels like Judgment Day for this Chelsea side. I would argue we have to win this game. I think
Yeah, to be fair, I think both of us do. I think for top five, I think it's like it's a massive game, especially when you see like the resurgence of Liverpool recently. I think the one thing I wanted to say about Chelsea coming around this time round is like when I was looking at the game at the weekend, you don't really have like any like players with old heads or just like players with a bit more experience to sort of navigate you through those tough away fixtures. Like you have such a young squad, and fair enough, you've got players in there like Enzo that have gone and won a World Cup, but he's still only like early 20s. Like I do think you could really do with like a 29-year-old centre back who's like been around the block. Like I'm not asking for anything like really old, or just like a midfielder that's like had the experience of like going to these tough away games and getting a result. Like I do wonder who are the players turning to during those difficult moments in games at the moment.
I think it's a great call out. I think in our prime years, the likes of Gary Cahill, Demba Ba
Yeah.
were exactly the profiles just to complement a sort of really top side and give us that edge, squad depth to kick on and mount serious challenges. I'd say last time you did call out that Chelsea disciplinary record. What's your sort of revised take on the ever evolving circus at the bridge?
Yeah, it's got worse, hasn't it? I think you're on to beat the record now with Neto's at the weekend. I thought Neto's one was really silly, like what two in the space of a couple of minutes. The second yellow, like that, you just did not need to make a challenge like that. He was showing him the line anyway. Um, I think it's definitely like a psychological aspect, right? Like whether it's petulance or whether it's just like losing like your cool in games. And again, I think that's when it comes into like senior players potentially like diffusing some situations before the yellow card can arise. Because was the first yellow for Neto dissent, right? Or was it like for complaining? It wasn't even for a challenge.
Absolutely, resultant to their corner. And I think
Yeah,
you're bang on with that petulance. I mean, reviewing the 10 Reds this year, hardly any of them are dubious. So
yeah.
shooting ourselves in the foot, and we simply cannot afford that. Come Wednesday night, I'm going to be in attendance, so extra onus on the players staying on the pitch and providing a strong showing. Let's have your prediction for this one.
Oh, I think I don't think it's going to be a good watch. I think it's going to be really cagey. Honestly, I think it will be like 0-0 or 1-1. I can't. I don't know whether either of us have the quality at the moment to really go and win the game. And I think we low key, I think both teams would probably take a draw in the result, given what the consequences are from where we both are in the league. Would love to be proved wrong. Would love to see us go and like smash an early goal and then like really sort of like assert our dominance with the top five. But I'm just not seeing enough from individual players, like in terms of individual quality, that can really go and like define a moment and like win the game. How about you?
I think more out of necessity, as I said, the fact that I will be in attendance at Villa Park. I'm going to be positive for that reason. I'm going to call a 2-1 Chelsea win. So I think Ollie Watkins is going to find form again, once again against the Blues. And honestly, I'm calling out. I thought both Cole and Enzo were shocking against Arsenal yesterday. I thought it was a competitive performance, but ultimately we did lack quality in
Mm.
the final third. So I'm going to call on João Pedro, who I think's been phenomenal for us of late, to score. And then honestly, just one of those two to show up and show a bit of quality to get us over the line. Say more out of necessity rather than confidence. But I'm sure it's going to be a cauldron at Villa Park on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I think it's going to be huge. I rated James as well in the Arsenal. I thought his delivery was pretty good. Like, it's criminal that he's a right back, but I guess it's similar to Shape. But like on the ball, I think he's really special.
I mean, yeah. Again, both ties against Arsenal, he's comfortably been the best player on the pitch now.
Yeah,
I think it just purely is an element of managing his body, managing his workload, that he just cannot consistently turn in those sort of red zone performances. And my
yeah,
fear would be, say, I hope he starts on Wednesday, but I wouldn't be confident given track record this past season or so. But we will see. I'd love an eventuality where both of us make top five. But sadly, I can't see it, mate. So enjoy the game
yeah.
on Wednesday,
Probably one
but
of us.
hopefully not too much.
I do think we have the I don't know what to call it. Maybe like the eject button of the Europa League as well. Like, I mean, it's us, Forest,
True.
and then like a couple of like one or two Italian teams in there. They're probably like likely to go far. So I think all the stuff I'm seeing in the news at the moment about like our FFP, like potentially getting penalised by UEFA again, like I do think Champions League could really be make or break for us this season.
Yeah, let's go with that then. Let's go with a nice Villa Europa League win, and we'll have Chelsea in that top 5 and 6 clubs in the Champions League again next
Yeah,
season. All the best,
I'll
mate.
take it.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
nice one. No worries.
Bye.
Cheers, George.